The Amp Mini is an impressively dynamic headphone amp capable of driving even very difficult headphones. Just as important, the Amp Mini sounds beautifully dynamic. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, music lovers and audiophiles. Today I'll be reviewing the Centrance Amp Mini headphone amplifier. I hope you enjoy it. The Centrance Amp Mini is an interesting twist on desktop headphone amps. The first twist is the provision of relatively large power output, suitable for both low and high sensitivity headphones. The second twist is the provision of a switchable tube input circuit with adjustable tube drive to allow you to adjust the sonic characteristics to suit your headphones and/or your music. The Amp Mini is priced at $3,500. The foundation of the Amp Mini is an 8-watt, that's 4 plus 4 watts, Class A transistor power amp. Those of you accustomed to headphone amps being measured in hundreds of milliwatts will recognize that the Amp Mini is 3 to 5 times the power of those amps. Such specs are kind of a so what until one of two things happens. The first thing that might happen is that you use, as I do, a very low sensitivity headphone like the Hi-Fi Man Sosvara. These are, in this particular case, 60 ohm headphones with an 83 dB sensitivity rating, and many amps struggle to bring them to life. But that just isn't a problem with the Amp Mini. The Amp Mini has a knob for setting the gain of the amp. With this properly adjusted, the Amp Mini can send the Sosvara up to any level I'd be comfortable with as an average level, or even higher. You may use higher levels, of course, but I don't go there, and I can't tell you how the Amp Mini works at ear-damaging outputs. But there was plenty of output left using above average levels, which I consider to be 82 to 84 dB on average. The second and bigger element of the Amp Mini that you should know about is related to power, I think. But regardless of the reason, the Amp Mini simply offers excellent dynamics, even with a headphone like the Sosvara. I also did a lot of listening to the Meze Empyrean 2 and observed the same quality, maybe even more of that same quality. I noticed this, for example, on Rameau's Zais. Yeah, it's an 18th century opera, which might be misleading when I say that, but the overture of this opera features some nifty drumming that simply had excellent drive and pitch definition. Part of a good dynamic presentation, sometimes overlooked, is the ability of the amp to retrieve low-level detail as well as to track high-level transients. On something like the Rameau, this dynamic contrast worked beautifully to give you a sense of the recording space and the instrument output at both low and high levels. You can't have dynamics with just high levels, though some have tried. Latency, from Bleu de Tiger's All I Ever Want Is Everything, also shows the rhythmic dynamics of the Amp Mini. Drums and bass are clear, and the sense of timing is just superb and never mushy or blurred. The piano, on Buniash Desvili's Pictures at an Exhibition, was impressive. This is virtuoso stuff with notes coming fast and thick, and the Amp Mini handled them easily. Again, soft to loud is one thing of note, but lack of blur is essential to believable piano. Any good solid-state amp should essentially have flat frequency response, yet amps have some tonal differences. With the Amp Mini, these were minimal. I thought bass articulation and treble clarity without harshness were more notable than any deviation from amplitude flatness. My listening notes also mention a low grain character that was very welcome. If these observations seem to focus on subtleties, it's always wise to remember that headphones themselves have vastly larger frequency response differences than most electronics, that is, most headphone amps will. Now we head off in a new direction, related to this comment about headphone frequency deviations. Centrance has happily recognized that almost no matter what headphones you use, there will be frequency response deviations from the ideal. This is particularly true because headphones have to attempt to track the difficult Harman curve, which prescribes an average compensation for the lack of a head-related transfer function when you're wearing headphones. Almost no one can get this exactly right. That is, almost no headphone manufacturer can get this exactly right. On top of that, mixing and mastering engineers have different goals, and so some recordings just sound wrong. You can deal with this via EQ, but Centrance takes a different approach. Recognizing that many listeners want very subtle adjustments, they provide a tube input circuit whose impact can be changed with a knob. You switch the tube circuit on, normally it's out of circuit, and then you can adjust the tube drive, as I said, with a knob. Depending on the recording, the knob goes from take a little bit of edge off the treble to compress the highs a bit to let's get crunchy. The first two options were obvious but subtle, as I said, and I think would appeal to many users. Beyond that was a bridge too far for me, but you have to remember that the effects of the knob are a function of the level of the recording, so there almost has to be a too much setting. I used the tube drive to good effect on the new Maren Morris album Intermission. The treble balance on this, sadly, is just way too hot. But with tube drive set to about 25%, the album became listenable without sounding dull. Then, when I switched to well-recorded material like Charles Lloyd's The Sky Will Be There Tomorrow, a simple flick of the tube switch took the tube drive out of the circuit. This isn't to say that you wouldn't like a little more jazz club smoke in the room than I do, but hearing this quartet in full detail makes me happiest. All right, let's summarize. As I hope you can tell, I thought the Centrance Amp Mini did a superb job of rendering the sound of a variety of recordings believable. I think the adjustability is a laudatory element as well, especially given the occasional great album that was recorded with imperfect equipment or imperfect goals, including historic and live recordings. But perhaps the most significant win here is that big power yields big results. I hope you've enjoyed this review of the Centrance Amp Mini. If you have, check in the description for a link to sign up for our weekly newsletters. There we publish reviews and articles you won't find on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you again soon.